Good evening to this extraordinary executive meeting on the 2nd of December 2020. Just a few housekeeping points. Please ensure that any mobile device or mobile phones are switched off. If you're not speaking or being asked to speak, please mute your microphones. If you do not mute your microphone, it will be muted for you. To assist people viewing the meeting, please turn your cameras off and only turn them on when it's speaking, and also introduce yourselves when you speak. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, could members wish to speak, please use the hands up facility on Teams when possible. Please note that the meeting is currently being webcast live. My name is John Horsall, I'm the leader of the council, and tonight there is John Kaiser, who's Deputy Leader of the Council and the Executive Member for Finance and Housing, Parry Bath, the Executive Member for the Environment and Leisure, the Executive Member for Children's Services, Pauline Jorgensen, the Executive Member for Highways and Transport, and Wayne Smith, the Executive Member for Planning and Enforcement. And Richard Delinsky, who is Deputy Executive Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Services. In attendance, there is Susan Parsonage, who's the Chief Executive of Woking Borough Council, Carol Camis, who's the Director of Children's Services for Woking Borough Council, Anne Hunter, Callum Wernham and Andrew Moulton, all of Democratic Services. Before I start, just a few apologies for absence. Charlotte Haytham-Taylor, who's the Executive Member for Regeneration and the Arts, Gregor Murray, Executive Member for Resident Services, Communications and Emissions, and Charles Margetts, the Executive Member for Health, Wellbeing and Adult Services, and Stuart Monroe, who's Executive Member for Business and Economic Development, have all submitted their apologies. Richard Delinsky is kindly taking Charles's place, and in accordance with legislation, Richard is able to take part in all the discussions but cannot vote on the items. We are quorate given the members who are here. Just a little short statement from me. This is possibly the last time we'll meet as an executive this year. I want to briefly take the opportunity to set out a clear commitment to everybody that we, Woking Borough Council, will not allow any of our residents to go hungry or cold during this COVID blighted winter. The two initiatives that will be discussed tonight are important in this. They will make sure we target support to children, families, individuals and businesses most in need. We are, however, prepared to go further, indeed, as far as is necessary to make good on that commitment. Therefore, I can also state tonight that should it be necessary, we will find more funding via properly accounted for supplementary estimate to support those most in need. We are not starting this from scratch, but the impact of COVID-19 has made this an even more important issue for us. In the interest of brevity, I will not repeat all the ways in which we're tackling poverty and the impact of poverty in the borough. Some examples will suffice. Our various green energy and insulation schemes have brought direct savings of up to 25% on fuel bills and helped alleviate fuel poverty for more than 500 households. Our local welfare provision scheme provides emergency help to people in financial crisis. Our council tax reduction scheme, helps people on low incomes. I'm delighted to say, following a recent consultation, we are working on plans to extend this following new decision-making process. Together with the initiatives to be discussed tonight, we will be launching a Kickstart programme which will help young people from the Universal Credit to secure jobs, and a digital inclusion project to collect unused IT equipment and recycle it for those people currently unable to access digital technology. I would briefly update on our ongoing process on another important issue for us, which is equalities. In recent months, we have signed the Race at Work Charter as a commitment to advance equality and tackle racism in the workplace. We have also identified an external facilitator to work with us and the borough's BME Forum in order to help us and the forum resolve issues to find a consensus for the borough's future. We are using the findings from Tackling Racism Matters survey to draft clear objectives, so we will go back to the public and stakeholders for discussion before they are agreed. We will be bringing in the new year to the Executive and the Council the next steps in bringing forward a poverty strategy and a revised equalities policy. In all of these vital efforts, we're working with the voluntary sector organisations in a genuine strengthening partnership that brings mutual benefit to all. We gain from the expertise and community connections the voluntary sector brings, and they gain from the financial and other support a local authority can provide. We are also working in close partnership with the health institutions, the CCG, the NHS and GPs, and with the blue light institutions, the police, the fire service and the ambulance service. It is a win-win arrangement that is bringing tangible benefits to residents, which we will continue to develop. And just last point, on a topical note, there are no Arcadia or Debenham shops in Woking Borough. I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear. So on to the meeting then. Can I ask any members of the executive whether there are any declarations of interest? If so, please put up your hand. Nope. Then I will move on. Public question time. First question, Daniel Hinton of John Kaiser. Daniel, are you here?
Chairman, Daniel Hinton isn't available tonight, so he'll receive a written response.
Okay, thank you very much. Philip Cunnington, a question to me.
Good evening. There have been concerns about mental health during the current COVID-19 emergency. Will the government winter payments, the subject of tonight's meeting, help residents in this respect?
Thank you very much for the question, Philip. The Department for Works and Pensions has specified that the COVID winter grant scheme for funds should be used to provide ring-fence support with the costs of food, energy and related items. It is not a grant intended to directly address mental and emotional health concerns resulting from the COVID emergency, although the support is designed to relieve financial pressures and associated stress and hardship experienced by families and individuals. Though I'm delighted to announce that we've concluded an arrangement with Oxfordshire Mind, who will provide for our residents a new service in the near future for mental health. Do you have a supplementary, Phil?
No, I'm glad to hear about that project and look forward to seeing Oxfordshire Mind's involvement. Thank you.
Annette Medhurst.
Hi, yes, thank you. Woking Food Bank provides support for households across the borough that are unable to afford to buy food and other essentials, and where appropriate, heating and lighting. So far this year, the Food Bank has received just over 250 referrals from departments at Woking Borough Council, including children's services, community engagement and local welfare provision. The COVID Winter Grant Scheme report states that approximately £100,000 will be distributed to families and individuals in need to provide support with food, water and utilities. How will Wokingham Borough Council ensure that this scheme is fully understood and accessible to its frontline staff working with vulnerable households across the borough, such that they refer into this scheme rather than the food bank?
I think you got lost for the question. The question was, how will the Borough Council ensure that this scheme is fully understood and accessible to its frontline staff working with vulnerable households across the borough, such that they refer into this scheme rather than the food bank? We want to be sure, Annette, and thank you for your question, that we reach the families and individuals most in need during this difficult time. The borough will ensure that a comprehensive communication campaign is rolled out across the borough and internally within the council to ensure that families, individuals and their representatives understand the purpose of the COVID Winter Grant Scheme, who might benefit from support from the scheme, and how to apply for support through the scheme. It is proposed that any individual or family will be eligible to apply for support, or a representative who may be a frontline worker at the council, a charitable or voluntary organisation, a partner organisation or a member of the public can apply on their behalf. We are very keen to work with our partners from the charity and voluntary sector to identify families who are in need and signpost them to the scheme for support or assist them in their application. Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. Hopefully I don't break up. So from the point where a struggling family, for example, talk to their social worker, how long will it take for the household to actually receive support from this scheme?
I think that's a very difficult question, because it depends on the complexity of their need. We, as you know, have adopted a one front door scheme, so the need would be referenced through there and then fed out to the various departments. But we are very, very keen to ensure that we meet every need in terms of both home, heat and food. Thank you very much, Annette.
Thank you.
Oh gosh, Claire Revy has asked the leader of the council, that's me, Claire Levy. Is Claire Revy?
I'm here, but I can't speak at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay, well, as you're here, I'll do the question. The question is, at Share Wokingham, we distribute food to households that have been hit hard by COVID-19. Whilst most people come to us at Norwich Church, we occasionally need to deliver food to support self-isolating households. How will the local authority help families eligible for support from the COVID Winter Grant Scheme, but unable to be physically get out to the shops to buy food with vouchers that have been issued? For those families who are unable to physically get out to the shops to use food and grocery vouchers provided, there will be an option for families to email or provide the vouchers to a representative who can use the vouchers on their behalf and deliver food and groceries safely to their door. Thank you very much, Claire. Emma Cantrell, a question to me. Emma Cantrell. No Emma Cantrell? Anne, is there no Emma Cantrell?
Chairman, she doesn't appear to be in the meeting.
Okay, thank you. That'll be a written answer then. So that concludes the public questions. Members' question. Alison Swaddle.
Good evening, Leader. May I ask, can we have confidence that the winter grant payments will be distributed before Christmas?
Thank you, Alison. The COVID Winter Grant Scheme provides £2,703 to Woking Borough Council to support families and individuals who are struggling to meet the cost of food and energy bills between the 1st of December 2020 and the 31st of March 2021. It is proposed that the grant will be distributed in 3 ways. Firstly, food vouchers to be provided to the families of the 2,166 children and young people in Woking in receipt of a means-tested free school meals to cover the Christmas holidays 2020 and February half-term 2021. £15 per child per holiday week. The total cost of this will be approximately £100,000. We are working closely with schools to ensure that the vouchers covering the Christmas holidays are distributed before the end of this term. We have a plan in place to achieve this, and we have systems and support in place which will be ready for schools to use shortly after the executive meeting tonight. Schools have been fully briefed about our plan. The remainder of the vouchers will be distributed shortly before the beginning of the February half-term holiday. 2. Support to be provided for up to 100 care leavers with the costs of food and or energy, and the total cost of that will be around about £5,000. We are working closely with our leaving care team to ensure that support is provided at a time over the winter months which best meets the need of care leavers. We are ready to provide support as advised by our specialist teams. 3. Support to be provided to families and individuals in need who do not fall into the above 2 categories. Frontline services who are already in contact with the families and individuals in need will be able to refer them for support via the existing COVID community response, one door operated by Woking Citizens Advice Bureau. The Citizens Advice Bureau will assess families and individuals for this and other support and forward details of families in need to the Council, who will provide support from grant funds. We will monitor carefully the demand from families and individuals for support, and should need exceed the funds available, a further paper detailing need and proposed response will be considered by the Executive. Do you have a supplementary?
I do. It's about Edenred, who I understand are the proposed supplier for the distribution of the free school meal vouchers. They were commissioned by the government to deliver the scheme earlier on in the pandemic. And at that time, I think, as we're all fully aware, there were, very well publicised problems and delays. Are you confident that this isn't going to be repeated?
We are assured that all the issues experienced early in the rollouts of the scheme have now been addressed. We are now also setting up a helpline for school staff who will be processing the distribution of vouchers via the Edenred portal so that emerging problems can be dealt with quickly. No schools have expressed concerns about using Edenred this time round. Thank you very much, Alison, for that question.
Thank you, John.
Abdul. Oh gosh, me again.
Good evening, John.
Good evening.
I'm delighted to hear your opening statement, which almost gives my answers. However, my question to you is, will the COVID winter grant scheme ensure that no child in the borough will go hungry this winter?
We are committed to ensuring that no child goes hungry over the winter months. The COVID Winter Grant Scheme, as I said, provides £208,703 to Woking Borough Council to support families and individuals who are struggling to meet the cost of food and energy bills between the 1st of December and the 31st of March. It is proposed that the grant is distributed in 3 ways. Food vouchers to be provided to the families of the 2,166 children and young people in Woking in receipt of means-tested free school meals to cover the Christmas holidays 2020 and February half-term 2021. That's £15 per child per holiday week. The total cost of this will be approximately £100,000. Support to be provided to 100 care leavers with the cost of food and or energy bills, total cost of about £5,000. Support to be provided to families and individuals in need who do not fall into above two categories. Frontline services who are already in contact with families and individuals in need will be able to refer them for support via existing COVID community response front door operated by Wokingham Citizens Advice Bureau. The Citizens Advice Bureau will assess the families and individuals for this and other support and forward details of families in need to the Council, who will provide support from the grant funds. We will monitor carefully the demand from families and individuals for support, and should need exceed the funds available, a further paper detailing need of proposed response will be considered by an emergency executive. Thank you very much. Is a supplementary, Abdul?
Yes, please, John. My supplementary question to you is, a family of individual may experience several periods of needs throughout the winter months. How can we ensure the family and individual receive help when they need it? Thank you.
Thank you very much. A family or individual will be able to apply for support or have an application submitted on their behalf as many times as is necessary over the period of the grant. Thank you, Abdul.
Thank you.
Barry Patman. Barry Patman to John Kaiser. Barry?
Yes, good evening. My question to John Kaiser is, what are the arrangements for the phase 2 of the additional restrictions grant, discretionary grant scheme, please?
Thank you, Barry, for your question. Our current focus is obviously on supporting businesses who have been impacted by the last 4 weeks of the lockdown restrictions. And we've already paid out over £500,000 of mandatory business grants and are already encouraging businesses to submit applications for phase 1 of our discretionary grant scheme that I hope the executive will approve tonight. In the meantime, we will continue to work with the local businesses to offer support and advice where appropriate, including signposting to other potential sources of financial support available through central government and other agencies. Wokingham Borough has been awarded £3.4 million of additional restriction grant to support companies over the next 16 months. And we want to make sure we listen to businesses so that we target the money where and when it is needed most. We have a growing relationship with the business community on an individual basis, as well as through business organisations and our own business, COVID business task force, all of whom are feeding into the economic response and recovery plans. We're working and moving into tier 2 after the lockdown. We are already looking at extending the current discretionary scheme to cover businesses who will continue to be impacted as a result of the additional restrictions that the higher tier means. With Councillor Munro, I've already asked officers to develop options for additional grant or other support schemes to be launched in the new year, aiming to support businesses through what is always a challenging time, even without the additional impact of COVID.
Do you have a supplementary, Barry?
No, I don't. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Barry.
Thank you very much.
Graham Howe for John Kaiser.
Thank you, John. And to John, whilst the grants in your latest reports are designated for business, many are run by families who've got a great dependency on these distributions to survive. Can you assure us that those that are vulnerable as a consequence of shortfalls in business, or indeed any other families, will not suffer homelessness within the borough of Wokingham?
Thank you, Graham. I think everybody knows that I take homelessness very seriously, and I can confirm that Wokingham Borough, we have a strong record of working with households and landlords to sustain tenancies and avoid homelessness. All households who approach the council will receive individual advice and assistance, and where required, a homeless application will be taken and we will support them in line with our statutory duties. Unfortunately, there will almost certainly be cases of homelessness as a result of the economic impact of COVID. But I can assure you the team will continue to do everything in their power to try and prevent these instances, and where they're unable to do so, we will support the affected households. I can also advise that Wokingham Borough Council has been successful in bidding for 1.1 million in homelessness funding in the financial year, along with homelessness grant of £448,000. These funds will help some of the most vulnerable in the borough. It's 160,000 over 3 years for first delivery. There's immediate support of £204,000, next step capital funding, which is £675,000, and rough sleeping, the initial payment, which is £91,000, on top of the homeless grant, which is £448,000. Wokingham Borough Council has been successful implementing the all-in policy for rough sleepers since March, where we were requested by government to accommodate all rough sleepers, and we will continue to do this through the winter months and beyond. Since the start of March, Wokingham Borough Council has placed 64 households into temporary accommodation in response to the pandemic. 34% have been moved into settled accommodation. We've been successful in our bid to fund the rollout of Housing First in the borough, with a capital contribution of £675,000 from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government. We will be purchasing 5 homes via our local housing company for the vulnerable rough sleepers. We also have received £150,000 in revenue funding from the government to provide intensive in-reach support of our Housing First cohorts over the next 3 years. Do you have a supplementary, Graham?
I did have, John, but you've answered the questions by inserting accurate and cogent numbers. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Graham.
Pauline Hellier-Simons for me.
Good evening. Can you ensure that all families in need will be catered for by the support provided by the COVID Winter Grant Scheme?
Thank you very much for your question, Pauline. The COVID Winter Grant Scheme provides £208,703 to meet to Wokingham Borough Council to support families and individuals who are struggling to meet the cost of food and energy bills between the 1st of December 2020 and the 31st of March 2021. It is proposed that the grant is used in 3 ways, as I've already commented. Food vouchers to be provided for the families of 2,166 children and young people in Wokingham in receipt of means-tested free school meals to cover the Christmas holidays 2020 and February half-term 2021. £15 per child per holiday week. The total cost of this will be approximately £100,000. Support to be provided for up to 100 care leavers with the cost of food and energy bills total cost of £5,000. Support to be provided to families and individuals in need who do not fall into the above 2 categories. Frontline services who are already in contact with families and individuals in need will be able to refer them to support via the existing COVID community response One Front Door operated by Wokingham Citizens Advice Bureau. The Citizens Advice Bureau will assess families and individuals for this and other support and forward details of families in need to the council, who will provide support for grant funds. We will monitor carefully the demand from families and individuals for support, and should need exceed demand, the funds available. A further paper detailing need and proposed response will be considered by the executive. All of that I've still already said. However, in answer to your specific question, we do have our ways of determining the families who are in need with the information that we've currently got. However, if we should have missed any, then councillors or well-meaning people should refer them to the Citizens Advice Bureau, and at the end of the day, should that fail, to refer them to me or another councillor or executive member who will then ensure that nobody falls through the cracks. I think that's very important for us to summon everybody, which we can, to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks. Do you have a supplementary, Pauline?
Thank you. Yes, I do. It's known that fraudsters have been targeting COVID-19 support funds. How will the risk of fraud be mitigated so that the funds are received by those that genuinely need them?
Checks are being put in place to verify the identity of those eligible for the scheme. Cash will only be used in exceptional circumstances to avoid use of the funds for items or services outside the scope and intent of the grant. If fraud is suspected, the Department of Works and Pensions will be notified so that any emerging threats can be identified and shared with other authorities. We are very conscious of the possibilities, and we are doing everything that we can to ensure that we are validating applications whilst not using that as an excuse for letting people down.
That's good to hear. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And the last but not least, Andy Croy, for me.
Good evening, John. Thank you for that. It's very kind of you. Very kind introduction. So my question is.
It's a pleasure to see you.
I'm sure it is. The executive plans to give grocery and clothing vouchers to families in receipt of free school meals over the school holidays. The option to give families cash has barely been considered, but it was an option that was allowed by government. A moral judgment has been made on the ability of parents to manage their cash. How many of the parents were expected to spend cash on tobacco and alcohol?
I really don't think that's a question for us. For clarity, the vouchers to be distributed to the parents, carers of children in receipt of benefits related free school meals can be spent on food and groceries, not clothing. The choice of food and grocery vouchers over cash is based on the following considerations. 1, a successful scheme for distribution of vouchers through schools is already in place and has been used already during the COVID pandemic, which means that we can put these arrangements in place quickly to ensure that families benefit from support without delay. We want to support families who may be struggling with debt to be able to ring-fence these funds for essential food and grocery items so that no child goes hungry over the Christmas and February half-term breaks. Families have a wide choice of supermarkets and food outlets in which they can use the vouchers. 10 supermarkets and other outlets are involved in the scheme, 9 of which have a physical presence in Woking. The means of distribution of vouchers is designed to be non-stigmatizing. Parents and carers exchange vouchers, e-codes for store e-gift vouchers of their choice. We trust that families will want support from us, which can be used to benefit their children over the Christmas and half-term breaks. Use of vouchers provides ring-fenced choice and protects families from feeling pressurized into using cash towards settlement of debt or other liabilities. I would add that we are operating a scheme which is consistent with our neighbours, West Berkshire, Bracknell, the Royal Borough, but I guess importantly for you, it's a scheme which is being used by Reading Borough Council. Do you have a supplementary, Andy?
Thank you, John. I do. I think it is a question for the executive because it's the executive which has decided to give vouchers and not cash. I mean, the local geography is interesting, but I'm not concerned about what goes on in other boroughs. I don't think you should be either. We should be concerned about what's going on in Wokingham. You've mentioned several times the ring fencing of cash and debt, but you're unable to tell me what proportion of parents you think cannot be trusted. And do you not think that this is just simply a lack of trust, that there is a moral judgment that people are impoverished because in some way they lack moral virtue, and that this decision is the result of that?
It is not for me as leader of the council to judge people's morals. I'm neither a priest nor a philosopher, and I wouldn't do so. We are faced with the task of in trying to ameliorate hunger, poverty, and destitution during a period which is a period of a pandemic. So our administrative arrangements are purely administrative in order to reach as many people as we possibly can. But I would point out to you, one of the concerns in using money is that if somebody has an overdraft and we put money into their bank, it is not entirely sure that they will be able to use the money we put in their bank. So I'm not sure that your judgment is correct when other boroughs similar to ours have made a judgment very similar to ours independently. But anyway, thank you for raising it, and thank you. So moving on, that's the end of the questions. Ulrikrin, could you present the COVID Winter Grant Scheme report, please? And you're silent at the moment. You're mute. So everything you said so far.
I'm not mute now. I said thank you very much for the introduction. You've all read the report. I'm just going to recap that this is a 170 million grant distributed by DWP via local authorities in England, of which Woking and Borough Council has been granted £208,703. We have received the first tranche, 50%. The grant period is from the 1st of December 2020 to 31st of March 2021. The fund is to be used to help struggling families and individuals with costs of food, utility bills and other associated items. At least 80% is ring-fenced to benefit families with children and up to 20% to benefit individuals. Local authorities have discretion to decide how best to reach families and individuals in need. So there's been a lot of questions tonight, which the leader has answered. Is there anyone, before I go to the recommendations, who would like to ask any other questions or any clarifications, etc.?
Richard?
Yeah, thank you, John. Yeah, just one question, Ulrika. If for example, somebody that comes forward and clearly is in need and qualifies for support, but for whatever reason the administration just slows down, for whatever, but as I said, for whatever reason, can these vouchers be backdated? And could these funds be backdated to somebody that's making an application?
Are you talking about children?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, all children in receipt of benefits related free school meals will have vouchers distributed via Edenred, which you heard before, the leader spoke about, and they'll be sent to the schools. And if parents don't have emails or a printer or whatever, they can be posted to them. If need appears later when the schools are closed, they can always go to the Open Door, the Citizens Advice Bureau, or to any other charity and we will ensure that they get what they are entitled to.
Well, that's thank you for that. But for example, if there is a delay for whatever reason, nothing is perfect in this world. There's a delay. Voucher will be backdated.
Sorry, Richard. Where would the delay be?
I don't know. I mean, we know that things don't run 100%. You know, I'm just concerned that maybe an individual family do not get the voucher for whatever reason. Will these vouchers be backdated?
Richard?
The vouchers will be available until the 31st of March.
Okay.
Richard?
Yeah.
If I may come in, we will, as a borough, ensure that if that were to occur, that we would solve that problem.
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you, John.
And as I said, Richard, the vouchers will not expire on Christmas Eve or anything like that. So I'm quite sure that we will be able to make sure nobody is going to suffer.
Okay, thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
Wayne?
Evening, Uda Corinne.
Good evening.
You've partly answered this, but on page 2 of the report, where it talks about the means-tested free school meals, and you have partly answered this, and earlier on in the evening we heard about Edenred, but how do parents get access to these, and how do we ensure that the access doesn't stigmatise the families?
So the schools will distribute these vouchers. For example, if a family cannot leave the house because they are in isolation, somebody else can come and pick up the vouchers. Somebody else can do the shopping for them. And in respect of stigma, well, there will be an e-code on the vouchers. And with that e-code, the parents can purchase an e-gift card. And that is the same gift card as you and I and everybody else can use. So by having the gift card, you are not drawing attention to yourself as being poor or anything else. It's just the gift card. So I think that has been taken care of.
Yeah, thanks. That's good. Very good. Thanks.
Thank you.
John?
Thank you, Chairman. You've both already said it, but I just want to reiterate, in the event that we find ourselves having spent this money, we still have people with problems. We will be preparing a supplementary budget, which we'll be bringing forward, so we can satisfy the need.
Thank you, John. Anybody else? No, let me go to the recommendation then. So I'm asking that the executive approves the distribution of food vouchers to a total value of £100,000 to cover this Christmas and also the February midterm leave. I'm also asking for £5,000 in total to care leavers to ensure they have sufficient access to food and utilities over the winter months. I would also like approval of the distribution of the remainder of the grant through referral of families and individuals in need by voluntary sector partners, including the umbrella of Involve, other partners and internal frontline staff into the community response front door facilitated by the Citizens Advice Bureau. And finally, I would like approval to have delegated authority together with the Director of Children's Services, Carol Cummins, to make decisions about the process for determination of level of support provided and means of delivery under 2 and 3 above, in line with the guidance provided by the Department for Work and Pension.
Does everybody agree with that recommendation? Put your hands up, please. I think that's unanimous for everybody. Parry? Oh, yes, that's unanimous for everybody here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
John.
Good evening. I bring to you here tonight the additional restriction grant discretionary scheme phase 1. This is to distribute the discretionary the restriction the discretionary part of the restriction grant. Basically, as you know, after the first lockdown, the government supplied cash. That cash was in two forms. One, it was mandatory, which was a substantial amount of money in the region, £19 million. And there was also a discretionary grant. The discretionary grant was significantly smaller. But this time round, they've decided to swap places, and they've decided that the mandatory grant will be 1.3 million and the discretionary grant will be 3.4 million. The only concern is that 3.4 million has got to last for the next 16 months. I mean, basically, we will be looking, this paper is to enable us to administer via the approach until March 2022 with £400,000 being made immediately to fund phase 1 of the discretionary grant scheme, which covers businesses which have been impacted with the national lockdown restrictions put in place from the 5th of November. The remaining 3 million will be used to support businesses through to March 2022, predominantly in the form of future discretionary grant schemes or phases, but also through funding wider business support activities that meet a clear need and can be shown to support local businesses. This discretionary scheme supplements the mandatory scheme of 1.4 million, of which we have already paid out over £500,000, which supports businesses which have been mandated to close under the national lockdown restriction. The report sets out the proposed phase 1 offer to the Wokingham businesses, taking into consideration demand, economic need and feedback from local business representatives. This is an urgent decision as set out in Rule 6.335 of the Council's Constitution, and therefore the call-in provision will not apply for this decision. The reason for the urgency is if business do not receive urgent support, they may collapse, and this would seriously prejudice the public's interest. The Mayor has given his consent to the urgency provision, and the matter will be reported at the next available meeting of the council, together with the reasons for the urgency. So what I'm asking for you all here tonight is I'm asking for you to approve the scheme and delegate the authority to the Deputy Chief Executive in conjunction with myself, the lead member of Finance and Housing, to make minor amendments to the policies as required for future phases.
Any questions? Can I just ask a question? Do you really mean 2022?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Parry? Parry?
Well, John, this is very noble of you. Is there a contingency built into this, just in case if we need some more money?
Well, unfortunately, Parry, the government's made it clear that this £3.4 million, which is not an insubstantial amount of money, obviously, will be all, whether there's additional lockdowns or not, this will be expected to last until March 2022.
Thank you.
Hence the phasing.
Wayne?
I absolutely agree with the urgency, John. It's really important. There's a lot of small sole trader business types in our areas, all our areas, not just in isolated parishes that need this. So I fully support it.
Thank you, Wayne.
Any other questions? Richard?
Yeah, thank you, John. John, do we receive this money in one lump sum and then we hold it, or is it something that's driven up from the government over the period of, what, 16 months?
No, I believe it's paid to us all as one lump sum, Richard.
Okay, thanks.
Wayne?
No, John's answered my question.
Okay. Any other questions from any other member? Nope. Then could we go to recommendations? The recommendation is, as stated in the paper, that the executive approves the Woking Borough Council's additional restrictions grant, discretionary grant scheme phase 1 policy related to COVID-19 pandemic, as set out in appendix 1 of the report, delegates authority to the Deputy Chief Executive in consultation with the lead member of Housing and Finance to make amendments to the policy as required. Those in favour? I believe it's unanimous. Thank you very much. That concludes our business for the evening. And thank you very much for attending, and good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Well, Sharon.
Good night.
Yeah, good night, everybody.